The law is an agreement between gentlemen that we're going to follow it in good faith. And as soon as you toss that good faith, you can do anything you want without even quote unquote breaking the law. So we could say that for instance, oh, well, we see that Trump has pardoned people without knowing who they were. So that's evidence that Trump didn't pardon anybody. Therefore, all of the pardons are invalid. Like they're trying to do with Biden. We just do that. We could just recall Hegseth to the military and then go put him on the front line somewhere until he, whatever happens, right?
Trump didn't just jail Comey or Latest James.
I would consider the indictment stuff to be on that level or maybe worse since the prosecutor is not even legally appointed. Yes. There's theoretically, I don't know how this will go all the way to the Supreme Court, but there's an open legal question right now about whether or not the Attorney General can infinitely have her own un-Senate confirmed prosecutorial appointments because of her creative reading of the 120-day rule, which would be, in my opinion, probably more destructive than actually just jailing somebody on no charges.
Okay, no memes. I need you out of the meme headspace. Okay, no being upset over last night.
Okay,
I'm getting one guide by multiple people, so I'm getting multi-guide.
Okay,
guys are coming at me at multiple times.
Okay.
Somebody brought up to you last night about, well, we should just bring them in front of Congress. We should ask them all those questions. If they lie, then obviously we can hold them in contempt of Congress. And you seem to kind of agree with that, right? That's one method to go about doing.
This. Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, let's say everybody gets pardoned. You have no legal recourse against any of these people. Can we assume that is a probable thing to happen?
No. Or I mean, he might try it, but if we're gonna be creative like the Republicans are, we're gonna be retarded like MAGA's being retarded, then we can just be retarded. The pardon is nothing matters. Nothing on paper matters.
Also, it's always said, but just remember for these conversations, if the president can only pardon federal shit, so in theory you can still prosecute these people under state charges.
State, this is and you can create lots of state laws in states, and then where you can bring in something new, and then they can basically commit the crime by continuing their lies. Later on, right? That there's some way that by lying they're threatening the state in some way, and therefore it can become something that they...
Yeah, and I agree with all that. I need a non-meme answer. You would never say that we should do things like suspend habeas corpus and jail people illegally, and anybody that is going to do that should be pardoned, and we should just continuously hold political opponents in jail indefinitely and pardon and say that we're not going to release them when it goes to court, all these kinds of things, right?
I don't think we should suspend habeas corpus. We can just be creative with things. So for instance, they're saying right now that real quick, we're not suspending habeas corpus. No, we would never have to though. Just like how this government doesn't ever do anything illegal, quote unquote, because there's always we could say that for instance oh, well, we see that Trump has pardoned people without knowing who they were, so that's evidence that Trump didn't pardon anybody, therefore all of the pardons are invalid, like they're trying to do with Biden. We just do that. If they want to do it with Biden, we just do it with Trump. But we have evidence, at least we have more evidence that Trump doesn't know who he's pardoning with a Binance guy than we do that Biden used an AutoPen. So we say some shit like that, get rid of all the pardons, and then just go down that road if that's what they want to do.
If Trump's got even the slightest dementia, I mean, that should invalidate pretty much everything he does, right?
Base.
But what the thing that keeps getting me, you will never advocate for us to illegally jail people. So I understand what you're saying about the pardons, and we can question the pardons, but you're all talking about stuff that's within the bounds of the law. You are not saying that we should go outside of the bounds of the law to jail people, pardon anybody that might be implicated in that crime of illegally jailing people, and then just continuously do that until we get our way.
I understand what you're saying, but the framing is incorrect. The problem that I'm having is that the law is an agreement between gentlemen that we're going to follow it in good faith. And as soon as you toss that good faith, you can do anything you want without even quote unquote breaking the law, right? If you ask the Trump admin on anything that they're doing, they would all tell you we're not breaking the law. We're doing our best to follow the law all the time. And every executive order says as long as the law allows. I wouldn't advocate for quote unquote breaking the law, just creative interpretations of the law that in my opinion are breaking the law, but the Republicans are apparently saying it's not breaking the law. I don't know if that makes sense or not.
Yeah, it's very simple in this hypothetical future. If you have Congress, if you have control of Congress, you can create laws that would allow you to do this, or retract laws that would not allow you to do this, or in this hypothetical future administration, you can back the court and suddenly no matter what you do, you're doing illegally. So it's a little also you can just repeat stuff let's say Pete Hegseth gets pardoned, right? In theory, you could still get him on international war crimes. Let's say, what if he gets deported and the judge's order only goes through after the plane's already gone?
That's a good point about international. That's a good point actually about international war crimes. A lot of these could be involved in issues regarding this, and therefore they can be just sent to the Hague, right? They're not pardoned from crimes on that level, are they?
Real quick, Hobbit, one thing that I think is important to point out about how the Republicans are acting inside the law, while Democrats have to act within inside morality. And it sounds like what you want is for Democrats to act within morality. But what's happening right now is we're in a system where you have to act within the law.
That's not what I'm advocating for.
Well, one second.
I heard your conversation with Pisco this morning.
But the deal is that you're asking for a very high-level moral interpretation of the law. And I'm saying that, and I think Desmond would agree, the law is so vague right now that there's no requirement to have that high moral interpretation. And we can use the interpretation that we need to get what we want done. And then afterwards, if we want that high level moral interpretation of the law, let's make it explicit. Let's stop leaving it up for chance. And if that's what we want, let's make it so that there's no disagreement around it. There's no interpretation needed. Because otherwise, as long as we're in a world where there's interpretation that can be done, why would we use an interpretation that puts us at a disadvantage?
Well, the problem is it's not a matter of interpretation. It's a matter of, well, it's kind of interpretation, but there's no way we can remove the ambiguity. You just have to get people who are willing to play that are like acting in good faith. Like, for instance, we could say, hey, how about this? Okay, we could just recall Hegseth to the military and then go put him on the front line somewhere until whatever happens, right? Yeah, they've done that, right? They said Mark Kelly, they want to recall him back into active duty service? Oh, fuck it, let's just do that. Any Republican that was in active duty military service, recall them and deploy them to front line somewhere in some fucking new war we could start or whatever, since the Trump admin seems to love that.
Happens.
Yeah, I mean, like, technically that's following the law. Yeah, go ahead.
I agree with all of that. What I'm asking you is explicitly, people are saying that we should break laws because the Trump administration is breaking laws. And I'm not saying like, oh, well, they're stretching the law in some sort of way. I'm saying people explicitly saying that we should break laws, not like know that they're fully wrong. We're not trying to stretch it in any sort of way. We're not trying to do anything fancy. They are saying we should break laws and jail people indefinitely against the law, not against morality, against the law itself, in no stretch or anything of what you're talking about with any of these other ideas. I am asking you, you would never advocate for us to explicitly do something that we know is completely against the law. There's no ambiguity, there's no interpretation, there's no nothing. We are doing it because that is strictly what we are doing to win or survive or whatever it is that you want to say.
I mean, I probably wouldn't advocate for anything like that, but I don't know how. I mean, like, you can basically do whatever you want, though, within the bounds of the law if you're going to be like the Republicans are where they're interpreting it.
I mean, if the president does something illegal, then that's what the courts are for, right? Just
file suit. But what's important, and the reason that I'm asking, and I don't like, I could sit in my car and talk about this forever, but what I'm explicitly asking is that Destiny is not saying that we should go and jail people without trial, pardon people that are doing the jailing. He's not saying that we should do any of those things, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I guess not, but it's not. I just feel like it's not really relevant because you can do whatever you want within the bounds of the law anyway, as long as you want to play like the Republicans are playing.
I mean, there is a relevance, right? And I think this is the whole point
of the law.
But within the bounds of the law means anything. I can do anything within the bounds of the law if I'm going to be creative with how I interpret things. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
But
you would never creatively interpret that you can hold people indefinitely in jail without trial. That's not within any bounds of any law whatsoever.
I think the United States already theoretically can do that with the whole Guantanamo Bay and suspicion of terrorist actions, right?
Yeah, but is that with American citizens?
I think it can. Can it apply to American citizens?
You said law, not morality, right?
Well, yeah, we're talking the law.
Yeah. You could theoretically do it to American citizens. So.
I mean, there's always got to be a narrative in which you can make sure that they're not seeing themselves as victims or can argue that they're victims, right? So that's the other importance of using the law, however creative it might be, so that you can neutrally say, we're just doing what the law says and we're protecting the Constitution, we're protecting the country. But if you couldn't do that, I think, on the basis of the fact that it just makes them look like they're victims of this big evil Democrats that have finally got power. So that's the main reason in practice that you shouldn't do that, right?
Well, I mean, they already think that, right?
Yeah, but it's not about them. It's about the people. It's about the other people that could vote either way. That right. The problem at the moment for the Democrats is that they're not getting enough people to vote against the Republicans, and some of those people would waver if they saw things like that being done.
But I guess the difference is that we're not saying that like we can agree that no matter what the legal situation is or how it came about, that Trump didn't just jail Comey or Letitia James.
I would consider the indictment stuff to be on that level or maybe worse, since the prosecutor is not even legally appointed. Yes.
You would say that it's worse to do that indictment than to just jail Comey?
Potentially, there's a world where it is.
Well, I'm sorry.
The fact that they're fighting, the fact that they're having I say that because there's theoretically, I don't know how this will go all the way to the Supreme Court, but there's an open legal question right now about whether or not the Attorney General can infinitely have her own un-Senate confirmed prosecutorial appointments because of her creative reading of the 120-day rule, which would be, in my opinion, probably more destructive than actually just jailing somebody on no charges, because at that point, you basically robbed the Senate of their check and balance on prosecutor appointments. Also, I don't know if anybody in the history of all of mankind, has anybody ever jailed anybody without charges? Like, every terrorist group, Saddam Hussein, Hitler, everybody that was quote-unquote jailing people, they always have charges. Yeah, it's always treason or rebellion or some bullshit. Everybody has charges. You just make them up. Like, I don't think anybody ever says, like, I'm jailing this guy without charges.
But I think in the context of what we're talking about in the normal way that people are charged and jailed in the United States is that they are expected to have a trial, and that the outcome of that trial determines what will happen with that person. That's the bounds that I'm talking.
I understand. I understand what you're saying, and it's impossible for me to express this point, like even with the fucking losers yesterday on that call. But like, there is nothing in all of U.S. history that is the equivalent to the President of the United States giving a public direction to the Attorney General to indict 3 people, naming the prosecutor to do it. You will never, ever. That's like the most, like, presidents would cringe. Like, even if you were doing that, you would hide that like crazy. You would never act in such a way. And for Trump to be doing that.
And that's why when GoodLawgic tried to say that Obama going after, I can't even remember what was it, the evangelical church thing or whatever.
It was the IRS tax bullshit, which was bullshit.
Yeah, that was fucking crazy. But that whole debate was ridiculous because your whole point is that Trump is doing these things blatantly and out in the open, and what they're saying is like, well, we don't know that these things didn't happen behind closed doors. And it's like, well, isn't it worse that we're just okay with these like huge breaks in norms, and the only way that we're like justifying it is, well, it's possible that Obama did this, or what's stupid is that in that whole conversation, not one of them talked about Biden's DOJ going after Trump, because they knew that they would lose that argument.
Sure.
Because of all the things that they tried to build up, saying that Trump was, okay, and he's within his bounds of his power and all that kind of stuff. They knew that would apply to Biden and what
I think Uncivil Law tried to flirt with the Mar-a-Lago thing a little bit, but yeah. I think the issue is, especially for lawyers, is like what they try to do is, because they know like 1 or 2 legal words that they memorized from that they probably had to relook up on fucking Westlaw or some shit. They think that they can dazzle people with their fucking retarded knowledge when they show up on panels. But like, as soon as they realize, especially that one fucking loser, the guy who claimed to be so good at self-defense but subjected himself to fucking assault for 30 minutes by me and Soypill, that guy, as soon as he realized that he wasn't gonna be able to play that game, he just fucking dipped immediately. So there's once you get into the substance of anything.
You called out that guy's laugh.
Oh yeah, ha, 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 ha. Yeah. Oh my god, what a fucking loser, dude.
Smarmy fucking dude, that was so fucking cringe. Okay,
cringe.
Well, I needed you to say out loud that you're not here for you're here for us to stretch things to whatever level that we can.
I think you're still missing the point. Is that you can do anything with the laws as written. You don't need to. Nobody jails people with no charges. Everybody has a charge. Every authoritarian, every dictator, every Spanish Inquisition had charges of being they weren't the witch people, right? Whoever, that was the Salem witch trial. I don't know. Everybody has a charge.
The Muslims?
Whatever. Sure, everybody has a charge.
Let's say that you put Trump in jail on charges of insurrection. You wouldn't say, okay, let's do that, but let's never give him a trial.
Well, you wouldn't have to. For the insurrection thing, you don't have to.
Well, no, he's saying for a criminal charge. I mean, you can't charge presidents with crimes anymore, so yeah. Like, I would never say that, but like, the worst thing that I could say, right, is that like, I think the next president should just order assassinations of every single Republican lawmaker.
That's
and
legal.
That would be something that is explicitly protected by now the Supreme Court. You can't, like, they could impeach him if they want, if there are any of those congressmen left alive, I guess, after the president flexes his newfound powers. But like, that would be a thing that's like fully and completely legal. More legal than what the Trump admin is doing now. So it's just a pointless legality.
Would you ever advocate for that?
Well, I don't know, but it would be fully legal.
Well, I understand, but you wouldn't advocate for it, is what I'm saying. There is
a sense of
morality that you do. Well, okay.
I mean,
at this
exact moment, no. And I love you, and I'm not accusing you of doing this. I'm not, okay? But like as Americans, we tend to just like super not give a fuck about other people being tortured and murdered and drowned and killed in other countries because it's just based and they're brown or they're south of the border, whatever the fuck. But like we are murdering Venezuelans. We're just murdering them in their boats. We're murdering people with no declaration of war in an area where we're not authorized to do, indiscriminate strikes or whatever, and then we're killing people who are floating in the water afterwards. That's just a level of insanity that is just so far beyond the pale. And it's like another day. 10 months in. Yeah. We're like 10 months in. It's just, or 11 months in. It's like crazy.
I'm Venezuelan American. Like this, like shooting of drug boats with no fucking legal justification at all. And notwithstanding, like just a few months ago, for like 4 months, just random Venezuelans that came over legally were fucking thrown into a El Salvadorian gulag with no charges, no crime committed. They were just in there, and the only reason they were let out was because the administration got fucked enough by the public pressure that they had to.
I do.
It's literally it.
One thing before I go. All these people that say that Trump can do these things within the legal bounds, you should just, anytime they talk about immigration and Biden letting people in and all that kind of stuff, he's able to do that. That was the whole point.
That was the whole point of my debate, is that they never go by what he's legally, for the Democrats, it's not what you're legally allowed to do, it's what you're morally compelled to do. And then for the Republicans, it's whatever is within the bounds of the most outer perimeter interpretation of the law. That's how they always do it.
But Hobbit, before you go, how far would you go? I mean, even if everything was legal, would you use it?
I would. So I've said, like, on multiple occasions, like, I think one, we should stay within the bounds of the law for sure. Like, now what that means as far as how far you can stretch it, like if Trump, let's just say, doesn't pardon somebody in this administration, like let's say he's about to do all the pardons on his way out, we know historically that Trump's not going to have this same cabinet through this whole administration. He might, but like, let's say Kristi Noem or somebody gets tossed out and he doesn't pardon them, we should go after that person 100%. We should go after, if he pardons his whole cabinet, we should go after every person that was underneath those people. I'm just in the belief that they're probably going to pardon everybody. So we will have to figure out whether it's through state charges or, through some sort of military charges for like stuff that Hegseth does, like whatever it might be. Like, I'm fully into us getting super, super creative. But I do think that, like, just jailing people with no due process whatsoever, like, I think that's legally wrong and against the Constitution. So
if your bound is the law, then it's legal to president has criminal immunity. That's what we just brought up. Assassinations. Sure. That's legal, right? Is that what you're saying, or?
Well, no. Right? I personally, I don't think that we should be. Well, just because the president is immune from that kind of thing doesn't mean that I think that we should subject people to have to do those things. So, like, morally, I am against assassinating people, but there's.
It's not really justice. I mean, I think actually the death penalty is not. Okay, I'm being a bit of of a European in this regards, but I actually just don't. Dying is not the worst thing, but being in jail is the worst thing, right? So. I mean, it wouldn't be very satisfying to see him, hung.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Well.
So is that old style, electrocuted or injected or whatever your favorite way?
You want to go old style? Some stuff in France, I heard a long time ago.
Earlier, Hobbit, you talked about like, they're not doing this stuff to American citizens. I know of an attorney who's in his 70s who works in a bankruptcy court. And he got on the wrong side of a judge, a federal bankruptcy judge, and that judge made some phone calls, and that guy ended up in an ICE facility for 2 weeks because his client turned out to be a person that had overstayed on their visa. And they said, he's aiding and abetting a person that's illegally in this country. And so this old man with no due process was held there for 2 weeks. A fully barred attorney, citizen of the United States, things like that. So they're still doing a lot of shit to American citizens and getting away with it, and trying to claim that it's within the law.
And I understand
I'm not saying that we should do that. I'm just saying, let's not act like there's if there's limits here, it's only the ones we put on ourselves. Because if we use the other side's limits, then what we are suggesting is tame compared to what they're doing.
Well, no, actually, Kafka, you're wrong on that. I mean, that's the whole point, right? And Destiny sometimes does this, but you can hold up the mirror against them, right, and say, hey, these crazy limits that you have now, if we use these when we get in power, you're going to have major problems, right? So I mean, their own limits are, are not actually limits at all right now, are they? So
their limits are just ones of like pure like efficacy, like what they think they can get away with.
Exactly. So if that's maintained when they lose power, then they're going to have major problems, right?
Because
they will be ending up
Democrats using them, because Democrats have never used them in recent history, like these kinds of shenanigans.
Yeah.
So it's not even crossed their mind that it can be used against them.
Yeah, my whole thing was just that although we can legally do a lot more than we normally do, we're still talking about things that could be legally justified, whereas I'm arguing with people that think that Destiny would advocate for people to illegally jail people, knowing it's fully illegal, and with that justification saying that we should pardon anybody, and then anybody that shows any sympathies towards Trump that comes into Congress or whatever afterwards of all these people that we've jailed, we should jail them as well, just for having, admiration of Trump or anything like MAGA related. And so I, listen enough to know that that's probably not what Destiny was saying. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay.
Because I keep getting these people that are saying that I'm being some like weak person by saying that we shouldn't just jail everybody. So
let's just say they should be afraid to go into international waters.
Jesus.
Good God. No, I mean, but I am like fully on board with using a lot of creative strategy that doesn't make us like committing illegal acts. Because I don't believe that like the Comey thing is worse than if they were to just jail Comey. I think it's worse if you jail somebody without a trial than to give them a false or like a shitty charge or whatever it might be. So that was my only thing.
Brave take right there.
All right.
I know it you would think it was.
On the other hand, it does need to be probably harsher than what Democrats are used to, dealing out.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, that was one failure of the Biden presidency was this, snail's pace dealing of Trump's illegal actions in his first term, which is, in the end, it was the worst of all worlds, right? Because it was so slow that nothing was really resolved. And it just meant that he could say, oh, look at poor me, I was victimized under Biden, which is now he's using as a justification for his actions, right? So it's going to have to be quick and swift and a lot deeper than people are used to with how Democrats treat Republicans. And ultimately, the absolute threat to your constitution, to your country, to the integrity of your country, I mean, it's bordering on civil war. So it's not like... they have no real reason to go after Democrats, but there is a real reason to go after Republicans. And if the law is too weak, then the law needs to be shaped to the morality of that issue, right? The Republicans don't have that argument. Democrats do. That's one of the differences here. And so if the law needs to be reshaped, it's not just for the sake of creativity and painting a painting. It's for the sake of making it more moral. And there's good arguments for that. And it's not about victimizing them. It's about the victims that they've made of other people, and that they have justice. So, I mean, that needs to be the framing. It needs to not sound vindictive, but I'm pretty sure the legal system can go very, very deep, especially if you just inject federal law into state law, and then the pardons are meaningless anyway.